So, the Bahrain Grand Prix wrapped up early this morning in Australia. It was a late night for those of us watching from Australia, but it was absolutely worth it because this was a fantastic race. Let's talk about it. So, before the race had even started, we had the stage set for quite a fantastic race with a Ferrari lockout on the front row, Lewis Hamilton starting from 9th after a gearbox penalty in qualifying, and Max Verstappen starting from 15th after an error at turn 2 in qualifying. And from the race start, it was relatively calm overall. Bottas got around the outside of Raikkonen at turn 1. There was a bit of contact between Brendan Hartley, I think it was, and Sergio Perez in the Force India at turn 4, which resulted in a 10-second time penalty for Hartley, which is probably a bit harsh, but at least it wasn't a drive-through. But the main drama from the opening laps was the double retirement from Red Bull, with Verstappen making contact with Hamilton at turn 1, running him out of track and giving himself a puncture and ultimately gearbox damage, and Daniel Ricciardo retiring on lap 5, I think it was, due to an electronic issue. And this is quite problematic for Red Bull, not just looking at this race, but potentially down the track, because they want to keep Daniel Ricciardo, but Daniel Ricciardo is going to go where the best car is. And if the Red Bull's still going to be breaking down every couple of weekends, he's not going to stay. And personally, I think with Verstappen, he's had a very average start to the year between Australia, where he basically let Magnussen pass him around the outside of turn 1, and that ruined his race there. Then mistake in qualifying in Bahrain, unnecessary collision with Hamilton. That was, if you watch it, it was entirely his fault. He needs to lift his game, and Red Bull need to lift it. So amongst all the chaos, Lewis Hamilton managed to scythe his way through the pack from P9 up to P4, basically putting himself in the battle for victory. It was Vettel from Bottas and Raikkonen, and the main priority for Ferrari was keeping track position, so they brought Vettel in first and put him from the super soft tyres onto the soft tyre, which at the time looked like it was them committing to a two-stop strategy, which Pirelli believed would be faster. Hamilton was committed to a one-stop, having started on the soft tyre, then switching to the mediums, and the battle for the win looked like it was going to be actually over pretty quickly, because once Mercedes brought Valtteri Bottas in and took him from the super soft and put him on the medium, effectively changing to a one-stop strategy, this meant that theoretically Vettel was going to have to pull out a 25-second lead on both the Mercedes. And at this point watching the race, it looked like Ferrari had just been outplayed. It really looked like they'd been snookered by Mercedes. Of course, that didn't turn out to be the case. So, for a while there, it looked like Mercedes were hanging back, waiting for Sebastian to either wear out his tyres or pit, but obviously they didn't pit. But with Kimi Raikkonen, they did, and this was a disaster, because as you might have seen, they changed 3 of the tyres on Kimi Raikkonen's car. However, one of them, the rear left, did not come off the car, and when they dropped the car, Kimi Raikkonen was told to go, and the mechanics were still in position trying to change the tyre, and one of the mechanics got hit quite badly. I think it's been confirmed that he has a broken leg, or at least a couple of fractures, so hopefully he recovers soon, as it's pretty nasty footage if you watch it. But took Raikkonen out the race, and basically guaranteed Hamilton a podium, which from 9th place was a good effort, but yeah, very disappointing for Raikkonen. He was looking on for another podium. But as I was saying before, it looked like Ferrari and Sebastian Vettel had been outplayed, because he was unable to stretch the lead from Valtteri Bottas. It sort of stayed around the 5-6 second mark. So not long after Kimi Raikkonen's retirement, Sebastian Vettel's engineer came over the radio and confirmed that they were going to Plan B, which for them was a one-stop strategy. And this looked like, this was a bold move, because Pirelli estimated that the tyre life for the soft tyre was around 25 laps, and to get to the end, Vettel was going to have to do a 39-lap stint on the soft tyres, which looked like it just wasn't going to work. It really looked like, but he was able to hang on somehow. It was those last few laps were very tense, waiting for Valtteri Bottas to maybe make a move, and it wasn't until the last lap that he really got close enough to have a look into turn one. I mean, when you've got a battle for the lead happening on the last lap, it's always a good race. Valtteri Bottas had half a look at turn one, but Sebastian Vettel was able to hang on and win the Bahrain Grand Prix and taking the first 2 wins of the year. But I have to say, I think, not as much as in Australia, obviously, but I think he did get a bit lucky with having Bottas behind him. I think if it was Hamilton or Verstappen or Ricciardo, they would have dive-bombed at turn one on the last lap. Valtteri Bottas didn't really commit, and Vettel was able to hang on. But not to take away from Vettel's drive, which was, aside from a couple of other guys who I'll get to, was one of the drivers of the day to make those soft tyres last. Unbelievable drive. Well done to him. Ferrari are looking extremely, extremely competitive heading into Shanghai. So behind the battle for the win, there was also quite an exciting battle for around 5th to 10th place happening between Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg, Fernando Alonso, and kind of Esteban Ocon, Sergio Perez, and Marcus Ericsson, very surprisingly. This was a great battle. Magnussen and Hülkenberg, no love lost between them, obviously, after Hungary last year. Magnussen was hoping Hülkenberg was going to have to suck his balls again, and it kind of did happen that way. Those Magnussen, Hülkenberg, and Alonso were stuck together for a lot of the first part of the race. Magnussen was able to pull away towards the end, but Hülkenberg and Alonso pretty much shadowed each other the whole race, and those 3 came home 5th, 6th, and 7th. But we have to talk about 4th place, because I think most of the paddock was agreed that this was the driver of the day. Pierre Gasly in the Toro Rosso Honda. Now, aside from Sebastian Vettel's win in Monza, this was Toro Rosso's equal best result, and Pierre drove a faultless race, didn't put a foot wrong all weekend, qualified extremely well, raced extremely well, and that car is pacey. I think we got one of the best lines of the weekend when, after qualifying, Pierre said, we have to look at the data to work out why we were so fast, which is odd. They put a package on a new upgrade on the car heading into the weekend. It obviously made a much bigger difference than they thought it would, because that car was a rocket. And the irony is not lost on everyone watching that Toro Rosso, with the Honda engine, are now thriving, and McLaren, especially in qualifying, seem to be struggling with the Renault engine. It's going to be nasty if that Toro Rosso ends up being quicker than them all, especially if Red Bull decide they want the Honda engines. McLaren could look a bit silly here, but yeah, Pierre, unbelievable drive. Well, however, another almost equal driver of the day behind Hülkenberg, Magnussen, and Alonso, and Gasly was in 9th place, Marcus Ericsson for the Sauber Alfa Romeo team. This is his first points, I think they said, in about 50 races, and definitely the best race of his career. He's obviously not the most highly rated driver in the paddock, and for good reason. The main reason he's still at that team is because of the Swedish investors at Sauber, but he drove a superb race today, not really fighting the cars around him when he didn't need to, and aside from the top 3, he was the only one to pull off the one-stop strategy, and there's something to be said for that, and Sauber, they'll be stoked with that result, because that car is looking closer to the midfield than Williams are at the moment, and that's a bit of a disappointment, really. So, and the rest of the top 10 was Stoffel Vandoorne in 8th, who put in quite a good recovery drive, considering he was last by turn 1, lap 1. He got a horrendous start, so for him to finish in the points behind his teammate, quite a good effort. And in 10th place, Esteban Ocon, picking up Force India's first points of the year. He was probably hoping for a little bit more, considering he qualified a little bit higher than that in 8th. But, I mean, it's a start for Force India, but they are not looking like on the same level as pace as Toro Rosso, Haas, McLaren, and Renault. So they're probably going to fall behind, which is unfortunate because they've been one of the standout teams of the last few years. Now, speaking of Williams, they had an absolutely abysmal race with Sergei Sirotkin and Lance Stroll, the last 2 classified finishes in front of the Red Bulls and Raikkonen, which that team, that is a disaster for them. I remember in the F1 post-qualifying interviews on the YouTube channel, Lance Stroll said that he was 4 tenths or 5 tenths slower than he was in qualifying last year, and for that team to be somehow have developed that car backwards since last year is somehow quite impressive in its own right, but a disaster for that team. They really need to have a good hard look at what they're doing wrong, but unfortunately, they don't have two drivers. They don't have even one experienced driver to help lead the charge. At least in the past, they've had Felipe Massa with all his experience, but now they have one rookie and one driver in his second year, and it's not looking good for Williams at the moment, and there's not really any signs that it's going to get any better, unfortunately. So that's pretty much been my wrap-up of the Bahrain GP. One of the more exciting races of the hybrid era, I would say. It was fantastic to watch. Props to Pirelli, I have to say, for bringing the super soft, the soft, and the medium to Bahrain. When I heard that a two-stop strategy was actually a viable option for the teams this weekend, I rejoiced, because last year the main problem with the races is that pretty much everywhere the tyres were so durable that it was pretty much a one-stop at all the races, and that doesn't really leave the teams any room to manoeuvre with strategy. But the main reason this race was exciting is because of the varying strategies we had, watching how Ferrari and Mercedes were going to try combat each other with strategy. Fantastic to watch. Props to Pirelli. I hope that anyone watching, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm going to be covering F1 throughout the year, Supercars, MotoGP. Yet to watch the MotoGP race. I hear it was pretty chaotic, and I'll definitely be covering that. So until then, I will catch you later.